Author Talk with M.L.Ruscsak with author David Ruggerio. I'm filling in for Mrs. Ruscsak. How you doing, Mr. Ruggerio?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing good. We got M.L.Ruscsak who just joined us, so I'm going to let her take over now.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you, Myron. Okay, I think he's going to... How are you doing today?
Good. How you doing? It's good to be with you today.
Oh, it's wonderful. So I have a little bit of your background here, and you started off as a chef.
Yes, a little bit. 30 years of my life, a little bit. I'm born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. If you can't tell by the accent, but I came from a tough neighborhood in Brooklyn, and I realized that I had to find my way in life. So in those days, there was a magazine, gourmet magazine, a national magazine, and there was a very famous writer, J. Jacobs. And I started buying back issues of Gourmet. And J. Jacobs, when I read after a few issues, told me that the best restaurants in the United States were the French restaurants. Mm-hmm. And he had said at those days that one of the best restaurants was a restaurant in Manhattan, in Midtown Manhattan, named La Caravelle. And I said to myself, coming from Brooklyn, that if I was going to do it, I was going to do it with the best. Didn't matter that I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I had no experience. But, again, coming from Brooklyn, we knew how to BS our way through the front door. So I went to a local B. Dalton bookstore, bought a couple of French cookbooks, and I memorized all the terms I could memorize, regardless of the fact I didn't know how to pronounce the words.
Right.
And showed up on Monday morning, and I started rattling off all these French terms to the chef, and he looked at me like I had three heads. And needless to say, he threw me out. So, the number 13 is very unlucky. It's a very unlucky number, but not for me. Because on the 13th time, believe it or not, I went back 13 times. They finally hired me. And he must have figured, if I don't hire this guy, I'll never get rid of him. So hired me. I spent almost a year there. And at the end of the year, I was the only everybody was French in the kitchen. I was the only American in the kitchen. And at the end of the year, they told me what a piece of garbage I was, that I wasn't French, that I had never worked in France. So after a year, I said to the chef, not for nothing. Well, if I can't become French, but why don't you send me to France? And he sent me to France. And I spent 14 months at the Hotel Negresco in Nice. And then I went to a small restaurant in the southwest of France, on the foothills of the Pyrenees, where there was a little French, I called him a wizard. He was the greatest chef I had ever seen, I ever witnessed. His name was Michel Girard. And I worked with him, and he opened up my eyes to what cooking could be. I came back to the United States. I went back to La Caravelle. I spent a couple more years, and at the age of 25, I took over La Caravelle, armed with all the insight that Girard had given to me. And I ended up becoming, at one point, the famed winemaker, Robert Mondavi, was looking for the 13 best chef in America who he was going to put on TV. And I was one of the 13 that he picked as the best in America. And he gave me a half-hour television show, and I never looked back. I ended up with my own television series on PBS. I had 2 series on PBS, and then I really struck gold when TV Food Network came calling. And at that time, there was a very homey cook chef on television. Her name was Sarah Moulton. And Sarah Moulton was doing a show on Food Network called Cooking Live. It was a 1-hour show where she also took telephone calls. I says, they call me. I says, would you like to? It was a lot for someone to do 5 days a week, live 1-hour shows. She couldn't do it all the time. So the producer said to me, how would you like to fill in? Yeah, okay, twist my arm. So I filled in for her. But you see, I was different. I was a wise guy. On television, forget about it. No holds barred.
Right.
People would call in. I had fun with them. But sometimes I would go a little too far. And one day, right before I was about to go on, direct the program and call me in, I figured that's it. They're going to throw me out. I'm never going to see Food Network again. And instead, she says to me, how would you like your own show? Oh, what is this? Some guy thought it was some kind of gag. Maybe there was somebody in the closet. But she says, we get a lot of mail about you. She said, more than half the mail hates your guts. And you want to give me my own show because some people hate my guts? She says, you know something? People that hate you are going to watch you more than the people that love you. And
exactly.
Here went Ruggerio to go. She gave me my own show, Ruggerio to go. And the rest was history. So, yeah, for the beginning of my life, I was a cook. And I got to tell you, it's the type of profession is not for everybody. But,
no, it is not. So, I actually went to culinary art school, was a manager for a while, had my nutrition license, and life decided to be an author instead.
But you could appreciate what I'm going to say. It's not for everybody, but for the people that love it, and you have to love it, it's a great career. It really is a terrific career. And it enabled me. I met so many people in my time. I cooked for 5 U.S. presidents. I rubbed elbows with people that in common life I would have never been in the same room with them. And I hope to say that it added something to my writing. And all those experiences, with these people and working in the kitchen. And like I said, so the next chapter of my life turned, and I turned to being, I don't say I'm an author. I say I'm a story. I am a storyteller. That's really what I am.
Yes.
And, well, thank you. I take that as a supreme compliment. I really do. And I find myself, that's what I tell people. I'm a storyteller. I tell stories. And God bless Grammarly and those other online aids, because if it wasn't for those, forget about it. I could never write. I wasn't the type of kid that went to school. But here I am, and I really am happy to be with you on the radio.
Well, I'm glad they have you here. Now, we did all your wonderful author or cooking career. What led you into books?
Well, I like I said, I have an affinity for telling stories. People may say doesn't know when to shut his mouth, but yes, I talk like to no end. I love to tell stories, and it was a natural progression. One thing that I love, I did it for my first book. I love horror. I'm a horror aficionado. I grew up loving horror. So when I decided that, I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't stand behind the stove anymore. I said, I'm going to sit down and tell one of my stories and put it onto paper. And that's what I did. And the first book I wrote was called A Wistful Tale of Gods, Men, and Monsters. And it's not a gory book. It's not one of those. That's not my thing. I like kind of like the classic type of tales. And I also, the other thing I love to incorporate real places and real people in fiction. I like that. If I write a reader, I write what I like to read. And love to read a book where I can actually identify, for instance, in the book, my first book there, I write about a cemetery in upstate New York. It's called Pinewood Cemeteries. And it's actually considered one of the 10 most haunted places in America. Really, no jokes aside. And it's got a mausoleum. It's one of these Terminus, is built in the early 1800s, has this mausoleum and stuff like that. Everything. It's got everything that you would want in a haunted cemetery, right? And it's in a town called Brunswick, which I incorporate in the story, this real town Brunswick. And it's just, Brunswick itself is really perfect for haunted, a scary movie, a scary book, because it even has the little one-room house built in the early 1800s with supposedly a haunted little girl, her ghost that people see when they drive by every once in a while. So I had all the framework there for a book, and I incorporated my story into it. And I think it's the kind of book, if you watch the movie Sleepy Hollow or one of those, it's that kind of a genre of horror where you would pick up it's perfect for Halloween. It's the kind of book that I hope that people will pick up every Halloween to read to their kids and stuff like that. And I really, really enjoyed doing it. I had a lot of fun doing it. And I think because I had a lot of fun, hopefully it translates into success. So that was.
I'm sure it will.
No.
I mean, I've had the pleasure at least skimming through some of it, and it's a wonderful book.
Thank you.
Just has just enough edgy creepiness to it that you can be in the story and be scared, listen to it, watch it in your head when you're reading. During a thunderstorm would be a perfect time setting to read that book.
Yeah, curling up, get nice hot chocolates, you know what I mean? Get there under the covers and read the book. That's the kind of book that I tried to write. And
I think you succeeded perfectly.
Well, thank you. Now you say to yourself, now I'm going to make you laugh. You say to yourself, how do you top that one, right? You write a horror book. How do you top that one? Well, my next book is coming out this coming June, and same publisher and everything. But I didn't write another horror book. No. Some kid from Brooklyn, right? What would he write? I wrote a romance. I wrote a romance. Now again, we're keeping in line. We're keeping the same live, real place. I try to incorporate real people, right? And growing up in Brooklyn, the year 1977. Think about that. It's really the most, for New York, I can't speak for Atlanta, but for New York, 1977 was the most tumultuous year that maybe New York had ever seen. In 1977, right? It started with disco, right? It was the year of disco when Saturday Night Fever premiered in 1977. We also had the Son of Sam running around New York, tormenting New Yorkers. And we also had a citywide garbage strike, citywide police strike. And finally, to top that all off, we had the blackout of 1977 in New York. We had in the middle of July, in 102-degree heat. New York went dark for 2 days. And it resulted in the worst rioting and looting in the history of the city. So that's the backdrop for romance for me. And it's I grew up, when I was a kid, I was a fighter. I fought in the ring. I fought amateur and pro. So the kid in the story, Italian kid from Brooklyn, 1977, who's also a fighter. and hanging out in the discos in those days. I feel bad for kids today. I got to tell you, not to have the discos like we had growing up. What a shame. I mean, the worst thing in the world is these telephones, these smartphones where they sit around, they text hello to each other, goodbye, how you doing, you look good. In our day, forget about it. We're in a disco, we hung out, we schmoozed with the girls schmoozed with the guys. So here is this Italian kid, this young fighter from Brooklyn, and he finds his true love, young Italian girl named Gia, and it's kind of a Shakespearean. I don't want to give the story away, but
right.
it's the romance. But also with that backdrop, with the Son of Sam. Son of Sam, this is true. This is not fiction. There was a New York City had a daily called, which it still has, the Daily News, and there was a very famous writer at the Daily News named Jimmy Breslin, and the Son of Sam was writing letters to him, and in these letters he would challenge the police. He like put the police down.
I think I remember that case.
Yes, and he told the police, "You can't catch me," this and that. He murdered quite a few people. In fact, he focused on dark-haired, short-haired young girls, and you know what it caused? It caused, I mean, long-haired, dark-haired girls. It caused girls to cut their hair and dye their hair just to avoid not to be murdered by this guy. He would kill young lovers sitting in cars, you know, in those days. And anyway, he wrote to Jimmy Breslin in one of his most infamous letters. He says that he was going to buy sneakers for the police because they were running after him so much, never catch him. He would buy them the sneakers. But in this very ominous letter, he signed it, "Say Goodbye and Good Night." And that's the title of my book, Say Goodbye and Good Night. And during the story, I present to the reader different evil entities hovering around, and then the Son of Sam is one of them in the darkness. And the young boy has to circumvent these evils and so forth. So again, I can't tell you no more because I'll give the story. But it's coming out in June. I think it's a fun. It's a really nice read. Really nice read, and I think I hope everybody goes out and buys that too. Because I got about 42 kids. I gotta support. So I need to sell as many books as I can here. So anyway,
I'm sure this won't be a bestseller. I mean, your work, you take fiction, put reality in it, have real places, is everything that we need to be captivated, drawn in, and wanting more.
I hope so. That's what I do, and I think that I found my, you know, I don't know if you would say style, but I found my kind of way of writing, and I feel very comfortable in that. I like to incorporate the real places and so forth. It kind of gives me, when I look at a story, it gives me the framework to work within, and it makes, at least it facilitates my writing, and like I said, I don't know if you would call it style, but I think that would be my style, that I incorporate the real things into it, and and I write about places I know.
Right, and it works well for you.
Thank you, and yeah, it works out good, and but so I enjoy it, and you know, I got to finally. So the last couple of things I'm doing, I'm on your show. I'm going to plug as much as I can, right? I am returning to the horror in November. I got another horror book coming out, and then in the fall, early winter, I have my memoir coming out, and it's a tell-all book, and it's actually been optioned for film, and I tell all the good and the bad. You can't tell half the story, so I tell the good and the bad of my life and what it was growing up and so forth. And so I thought it's called High Crimes and Haute Cuisine. And it's my life is kind of a contradiction. I grew up in Brooklyn. Was called Vanderveer Projects. It was the worst federally funded housing project in the country in those days. And I grew up in a place in Brooklyn, and I say the street because a lot of your listeners will recognize it. I grew up on Noe Street in Newkirk in Brooklyn, and that area, that intersection, was made famous by Biggie Smalls, the rapper. Biggie Smalls used to rap about Nostrand Avenue all the time. And it was a tough area I grew up in. And so I tell the stories of what it was like to grow up in that area. By the time I was 10 years old, I'd been arrested 6 times. And I did everything from I used to do I used to make money when I was a kid running tree card Monte games. I don't know if people in your listening world knows what the tree card Monte is. Those are tree cards. We used to run around with cardboard boxes and 3 cards, and you had to pick the ace of spades. And the cards were folded. It was a sleight of hand. No one ever won. And so I did that. I did all kinds of stuff. And it led to different things. And I wasn't a good kid. But I found my way, like I had told you. And I went to France and so forth. So that's my book, my memoir. It'll be coming out in the fall. And
that'll be excellent because you have where you were a troubled child, teen, and you brought yourself up to become something. Those are the best stories.
You got the choice. You either lift yourself up and you do what you got to do, or you end up in prison with that. That was the choices when I was growing up. There wasn't much other choices. But, Brooklyn was a today it's kind of funny, You watch Brooklyn on TV today, and it's this kind of glorified place. Now, so today, I almost don't recognize Brooklyn, what they talk about. But back in the day, it was a tough place, but it was a colorful place. It was a type of place that there was characters behind every turn, and those characters really lended themselves to writing. And it's those type of colorful people that create, I believe, the best characters for book, especially in fiction. I mean, some people they don't want you to tell you their real story, but as a fictional character, a lot of those people were terrific to become fictional characters. So it was something else.
Well, we wouldn't have the literature today. We wouldn't have the culture today without the people that grew up when Brooklyn was a lot harder than it is now. Let's put it that way.
Very true. Very, very true. But it was something else. But so those are the books I got coming out in the fall. This coming fall.
Well, you have a wonderful collection starting. And I foresee you having many, many, many more books coming out because, like you said, you're a storyteller. You have lots of stories to tell.
Yeah, I have no clue. Yeah, I have no idea what I don't know how many cockamamie stories I got to tell in my behind the curtain. It's
right.
But
we never know.
I enjoy it.
Yeah.
I enjoy writing.
Well, it's fun. I mean, it's a way to express yourself, a way to get your story out there, but at the same time, we never know what's behind our curtain until we write it.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's just it's been a good gas ride growing up the way I live in the life that I have, and
it's a good learning experience, but it also gives you a lot of things that you can write about in different things. I mean, you take Brooklyn, you take your backdrop for your romance, you have all this different things you have because of the life experiences that you had growing up until now.
Absolutely, and so it's absolutely true, completely true what you say.
Mhm. So, looking back, what is the hardest skill you had to learn relating to your book writing?
It was particularly when, writing my memoir is to just kind of being comfortable in my own skin. When I wrote my memoir, I think that that was the most difficult thing, was being comfortable in my own skin. Being able to tell the story. I had to start, as a kid and stuff like that. I had to relive my youth, and it was not easy. My father was jailed before I was born. When I was 4 years old, I found my younger sister dead. When I was 5, I watched my mother die. She was pregnant. It was just me and my sister left alone in the world. And I didn't meet my father till I was 13 when he got out of jail. My father ended up being a very infamous heroin trafficker in New York City, in the tri-state area. And, when my father got out of jail, he felt that it was, that I should follow in his footsteps. And I was a bad kid, like I had told you. But it was not easy to write about these things. A lot of bad things went on. I had one of my dear friends. I watched so many of my friends die or go to jail. I had a very dear friend. His name was Caesar. And when a mother calls a boy Caesar, you better hope this kid ends up being a tough kid, like a big tough kid. He's not a pipsqueak with glasses with a name like Caesar, because forget about it. They would unmercifully they go after him. But Caesar was third place in Mr. America when I was a kid. He was a big dude. And we ended up working in a very, very famous club in Brooklyn, a disco. And we worked the door, me and Caesar. And in those days, finding a girl wasn't hard. And but those were it was a different era, the disco era. And I have to write stories that were very, very hard. As Caesar ends up with a young girl that's the girlfriend of a mob boss in Brooklyn.
Of course.
And he's warned not to go near the girl, to walk away. And guys had come down from this guy. The boss was from the Bronx, and guys had come down from the Bronx and talked to a friend of my father's and told me that I was to bring Caesar to a restaurant on a Thursday night, and I knew what that meant. I went back to Caesar. I said, "Well, Caesar, listen to me. These guys are not messing around. You got to disappear." And he thought it was a joke, and he didn't listen to me. And that Thursday night, that Friday morning, Caesar was found behind in his car, under the Verrazano Bridge with 2 bullets in his head. And it's very, very hard to go through and rewrite all those things. So to answer your question, I had to get comfortable in my own skin when I wrote this memoir. And a lot of stories like that. It wasn't easy to relive. And,
no.
And it culminates, my memoir culminates with the death of my son. And that was the hardest thing to write about. Really was not, it's the kind of thing that to write it, tears you apart. But I felt that it was necessary to tell the story. So
sometimes we have to write those stories just so we can finish healing. It's not that we're moving past it, but we're ready to heal, or at least start to heal.
Well, this is very true. And the book is, I think people will find it a roller coaster ride, a true roller coaster ride to read that book. And that'll be coming out in the fall.
Well, I look forward to reading it when it comes out, so please let me know when it does so I can look for it.
I will. Great.
In the meantime, where can our readers find you in your books?
Well, of course, all the regular places that you buy books, your favorite place, whether it's Barnes & Noble, Amazon, so forth. Or you can visit, see where I'm going to be, my upcoming appearances and stuff, RuggerioBooks.com. It's RUGGERIO Books, BOOKS.com. And you can find, I give giveaways, stuff like that. And you stay in tune with me. And maybe you'll find a funny story here and there.
Well, funny stories are always entertaining when we go on an author's website. So.
Well, thank you. Well, I think that would
Well, we have so many stories to tell. Sometimes we just put a joke on our website to see if anyone's paying attention.
Yeah. So, RuggerioBooks.com. And you see all upcoming appearances in the books and so forth.
Now, I know you have the 3 books coming out. Are you planning to write either another romance or horror book anytime soon?
I think I enjoy writing horror. So I have the horror, the next horror coming out in November 22nd, and then I'm exploring the possibilities of what nightmare can I conjure up, and so I'm working on that. What's the next nightmare?
Well, being in New York, you have several eras you can choose from, right?
Oh yeah, a lot of nightmares here in New York. Forget about it. I'm sure we got a few in Atlanta too, but we got our share of nightmares over here. So there's actually one particular place. I'm not going to give away the whole story, but my next target for next book is a very infamous in Long Island, which is the area right outside of New York.
Okay.
There's a very infamous psychiatric hospital that's now closed. Huge. There's got to be maybe on nearly 30 acres of this hospital where supposedly all kinds of crazy things went on and the evil experiments and so forth. And I've been breaking the law. I've been jumping the fence at night and going around with my phone on, the camera on my phone, and researching the next horror, which I think will be centered in this psychiatric hospital called Pilgrim State in New York. So I think that it gives me a lot of fodder for horror here.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think I know what psychiatric hospital you're talking about because it's been featured on Ghost Adventures at least once.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of fodder in New York just for horror stories. I mean, you can pick almost any decade. You have some type of murder or something that's surreal at the time, and you're looking back, and some things are still unsolved.
Oh, you got a lot of sick maniacs running around New York. Plenty of material here going on to write more horror. So, yeah, the romance, I don't know where that came out of, but I had fun writing it. But nah, my journey is still on horror. It will be on horror. I think that's what eventually I think people will say, oh, yeah, that sick maniac, he writes horror books. So, a lot of crazy people in New York.
Well, we'll have to keep track of you to see if any of your horror books make it to the big screen. Because really, from what I've read, and again, I just skim over just enough to get a feeling of the book. It's something that can rival Stephen King on the big screen, but without the blood and gore.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. That's quite a compliment. And I appreciate that. Anytime you're mentioned in the same vein as Stephen King, who's one of my favorite authors, that's quite a compliment, and I do appreciate that.
Well, I don't give out too many compliments that are that high up, but I mean, I'd be out of a job if I did. But no, seriously, it can rival some of his work.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And it was awesome having you on the show today. I hope to have you back when the next horror book comes out and I have time to read the whole thing, because I love my horror books. I love my horror movies.
I think that down deep, I think most people like some type of be scared some way. Not everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has their own level of the amount of fear they want to touch, and
right.
So I think that everybody has that. That has some type of affinity to being scared, and so I think I'm on the right track.
You are, because it's not the slasher, gory things. It's the intense emotion that you're triggering, and that's the difference. And that's where you're very good in excelling at touching someone that way.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
That.
And again, thank you so much for being on the show.
Great.
And this is David. Say your name one more time. I'm going to butcher your last name.
Nice
Ruggerio.
Nice Italian name, Ruggerio.
Of course. and we'll have you back as soon as we get that next horror movie or horror book out.
Great.
I'm sorry. See, I'm jumping the gun with movies already.
Hey, maybe a movie too. Who knows?
Who knows? I mean, it's whoever's listening in Chicago and all over the place.
You're listening in. You can call me collect. No
and
problem.
A nice Italian boy like me listening, Mr. Ruggerio. I grew up in New York myself. I was there during the 77 blackout. I got a nice Italian name, too. I grew up in Harlem.
Well, then you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. My aunt, during the blackout, my aunt came and got me and took me to New Jersey so that I wouldn't be involved with the blackout. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and you know that was sometime. That year was something else.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to say that, Mrs. Ruscsak. I remember them times that he was talking about in New York.
That's why we do these live shows. That way people like you can chime in at any time during the show.
I didn't know it at the time, Mr. Ruggerio, but I was related to the Gambinos. I always thought I had a strange life, though. You know what I mean?
Really? You were related to them?
Yeah, still is, unfortunately. There's some good and some bad in that. I'm in Cleveland right now, Mr. Ruggerio. Just to put a little bit more, twist into the they got a stronghold in Cleveland too.
Well, Cleveland is a place I like very much. The only problem is with you guys, You can't get your football team together. What's up with that?
You said we can't get what the football team? They don't want to get it together. It's a money maker. It's a money maker. They don't want to get it together.
Well, listen.
If they got it together, people may actually want to go to the games.
Well,
how else would they embezzle so much money if they didn't have the Browns?
Well, look, we gave you a gift. We sent you over Odell Beckham.
Yeah, well, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure, Miss Ruscsak, just hearing the interview. And I'm going to make Mr. Ruggerio an offer after the phone conversation over to try to help him go a little further. I've already discussed this with Desiree, but, I mean, it's just something that I want to do for Mr. Ruggerio. Salute, Mr. Ruggerio.
What's that?
Salute.
I said salute.
Oh, salute to you, my friend. Thanks so much for everything.
And we will talk to you later, and I'll let Myron talk to you about what he's wanting to do.
Okay. All right, very good.
And have a nice evening.
You too. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.